Hey guys, how you all doing? We have Brian R. Johnson with us today on our SellerSPEAK session. Welcome to the show, Brian. Happy to have you here.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
So Ryan is a serial entrepreneur. He's been selling online on Amazon for about 5 years, and prior to that on eBay for about 7 years. And he started PPC Scope in 2015, which is a PPC analytics platform. And he's also started advertising company called Canopy Management, and he's provided consultancy services to quite a lot of well-known brands. He's also created a Facebook group called PPC Troubleshoot, Amazon PPC Troubleshoot, which is hosting about 15,000 members who are actively discussing questions and answers. Is there anything that I'm missing, Brian?
No, I think
No?
yeah, you hit it. Yep, that's good.
Awesome. I'm really happy to have you on the show, Brian. And so let's dive right in. So first up, since this is the year end, let's review how 2018 has been for us in terms of Amazon advertising. There have been a lot of exciting new changes, hasn't there? New features released in sponsored products and sponsored brands in 2018. Can you bring our viewers up to speed with these new changes?
Yeah, I mean, so there's been a number of changes, of course, with Amazon consolidating some of their ad platforms. There's a number of reasons for that, including not wanting to have the programming and development staff and management staff in order to handle two different areas. But it's also to make it so that the platforms are more flexible. So previously they would have more of a split between vendors and large business enterprise brands versus the 3P or the private label sellers with Seller Central. And so they did a lot more merging of the technology, certainly within the what we used to be called like Amazon Marketing Services. They just switched over to advertising.amazon, and that combined some of the vendor items, some of the Amazon Marketing Services, some advertising options for merch by Amazon, and so they merged a lot of those together. At the same time, they upgraded some of the reporting features that were available in that platform, as well as at the same time they updated the reporting features in Seller Central, and they seem to be on a very aggressive track this year in order to roll those similar features out. So they only have to, theoretically, they only have to manage one set of code for both platforms. There is some overlap, but they are definitely working more toward consolidation, and they'll still continue to have a split for some of their paid advertisers, as in those that actually pay Amazon for their monthly consulting. And then basically everybody else will primarily use Seller Central with a little bit of the AMS features as well.
Yeah. Overall, I think it's a super exciting time for our Seller Central guys over here. And according to you, what are the top factors that contribute to conversions on Amazon, both organic and paid?
Well, certainly, as Amazon continues to push, year over year, they continue to push for higher relevance. They essentially demand that the sellers are trying to focus into smaller product targeting rather than just trying to appeal to everybody. And so what we find is it's a lot easier to rank organically and sell, as well as to do the advertising targeting, if we actually know who the intended target audience is. Like many ad platforms outside of Amazon that are much more mature, we're starting to get to the point where we're getting better information about who the target audience is, what kind of search terminology and how they're finding our products. And Amazon is going to reward us by focusing the content of our product listing and the targeting to focus in on specific, smaller audiences.
Yeah.
So I would say, from a conversion standpoint, relevance is absolute number one. Product quality, of course, has to be there. It's kind of like a minimum requisite, because otherwise you'll get trashed on the product reviews. Certainly, not simply just having previously it was better to have, like, say, a low price, and that was considered like, okay, it's a low price, a competitive price, and you end up price wars. But really, it's understanding how does your product position against other competitors within a specific price point, within a price range. If you may have other products, competitive products that are in a $20 to $30 price point, and you're in the $30 to $40 price point, those are two different audiences. They really are, and they should be targeted separately, and they should be treated separately, both from a competitive standpoint as well as a targeting and product listing. The content development needs to be adjusted according to, even within the price point. So it's requiring, like is done everywhere outside of Amazon, it requires us as seller to do a lot more work to gain more expertise. And those that don't step up and learn and grab the resources and try to stay on top of everything, they either need to learn how to outsource quickly, or they need to just learn to, like, okay, I'm going to have to put in extra work in order to figure out the details. There's not I'm going to just turn on an automatic campaign, or I'm just going to throw up a listing and it'll just magically work. Those days are long gone.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of which, what do you think about the kind of keywords that people have to select, right? You were just talking about how keywords play a big role in positioning a product in terms of pricing, or in terms of other competitors in the same niche, so to speak. So do you have anything to say about the keyword selection in here?
Well, certainly, yeah. I mean, that's one of the things. Certainly, in my agency, we spend a very large amount of time on competitive and keyword research, because we're certainly not going to rely on just some of the standard keyword research tools that are available. That's not enough. So first of all, we'll start out with 3 or 4 of the most popular keyword research tools, but we go well beyond that, and we've got our own proprietary technology and our own processes for that. And really what we're trying to find is, where can we differentiate each of our products from the competitors who are using everybody else's tools, and they're all the same kind of list of keywords, and everybody's competing for the same thing. We tend to go, we take a different road, if you will. Is that, yeah, sure, we'll bid on the more competitive keywords, but not as aggressively unless we see there's some additional benefits, such as we can rank higher organically because of additional sales velocity. But really, we're trying to be have a much wider footprint, and be in places where our competitors don't even know exist. And so that's kind of, it's more about, again, it kind of throws back to that. It's more work, but if you do it, it will pay off.
Right. Definitely. And speaking about both organic and paid, one quick question. The whole flywheel thing, where once you start running sponsored campaigns, and then you get a lot of sales from PPC campaigns, and then that contributes to organic ranking, right? So again, correlating the PPC sales with organic. So what is your opinion about how much of an influence does PPC sales have on organic ranking and organic sales, therefore?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does have an influence on organic ranking and organic sales. I think it's often overstated just for marketing. For marketing, it's overstated as far as what the value is. But I would say I think the assumption that I commonly hear is that if you just turn on advertising, then you're naturally just going to rank higher organically. And it doesn't work that easy. It's more of a case of, if you can identify what the specific search terms are that convert well for your product through advertising, and you have a competitive ability to increase your organic search position for those keywords, by being very aggressive on very specific keywords, then definitely take advantage of that. But it's not like just a shotgun where you can just apply it to everything and it'll just magically all work. You have to be very focused as far as where, I mean, again, it wasn't my intention to kind of like to come in and say, it's like, you'll have to work harder, but the environment is definitely presenting. It's like if you do extra effort, you'll get the ROI. Maybe not right away, but if you spend the time and you get more effort. It's kind of hard to do on an individual basis. It usually requires some kind of team and outsourcing in order to help get that done, if you will, the extra work.
Awesome. Yeah, I completely agree with you. And also, Amazon is becoming extremely competitive, and everybody's trying to train themselves on more and more and trying to work harder. So it's just, yeah, I completely agree with you. And do you have any hacks for our viewers about how to increase conversions or get more ROI?
I mean, so, I mean, I think it's a perception based off of what it is, what's the objective or what's the goal of the individual seller. Really, I mean, I usually start out by saying it's like, okay, you really have to understand as far as what you're focused on right now, determining what your own definition of maximizing returns. If I'm launching a brand new product, I'm going to use a launch strategy to get my product in front of as many people, many relevant shoppers as I can, with very aggressive advertising and third-party promotion, perhaps off Amazon advertising. That would be part of a product launch that I might use for 1 to 2 months. It can be expensive, but it works. It works well. Other objectives, at least from an advertising standpoint, is understanding, like learning who your target audience is. It's more of a research method. Essentially doing prospect ads in order to figure out which kind of search terminology that shoppers are using in order to find and to purchase your product, so that you can then continue to focus in on what's working and narrow down into a target audience. It's about learning the audience. That can usually take, a couple of months, and it can be frankly, it can be ongoing, but it does need to be managed. Others include, if you're just trying to increase your organic position, you might be more aggressive in specific keywords in order to increase sales velocity. Like I said earlier, it's not about being aggressive on advertising on everything. Be very, very focused on just the keywords that you'll actually get the return on your investment on. The ones where you can actually move the needle, where you can actually move your organic ranking up, because there is enough conversions on your product from an individual search term or keyword, and there's less resistance. In other words, the competition is weak enough that there's less resistance for you to move up through additional advertising. Other things, usually it comes down after a while. You usually have to get back to profitability at some point. Profitability, the hacks on profitability is primarily just having a good weekly optimization process. That's certainly, I've got a 9-step checklist that I teach publicly. My own internal agency team, we've got a 24-step process that we use internally. So just optimizing on a weekly basis will definitely keep those costs down. And over time, ideally, that it's not so much a hack, it's more of a strategy, and that is continue to focus in on the Pareto, the 80-20, that 20% of those keywords that are producing 80% of the sales. That's where your focus should be on. It shouldn't be on like, I've got to be everywhere and test everything. It's how can I continually focus in on what's going to provide the best return on ad spend. And then I think this actually we'll probably discuss this later, and that is, don't trap your ads into just one keyword match type, which is a common mistake.
Yeah, perfect. So let's just switch back to product targeting for just a bit. We were just talking about how Amazon has released new features, and so let's talk more about product targeting. What are the different features available in automatic and manual targeting, and also if you can just talk about what are the advantages that it brings, that we didn't have before, maybe.
Certainly. So, I mean, there's a couple things on this. So, with the new, and I say new, these rolled out back in October, and we're in December now. So, but they haven't rolled out to everybody. So not every Seller Central account will actually have these features. But there are 3 primary advertising options within Seller Central. That's going to be your sponsored products. That's going to be the sponsored brands, which formerly was known as headline search ads. And then you have display ads, which are not product display ads like Amazon Marketing Services had. They're actually an external remarketing ad. Those are very limited as far as who has access to those. With sponsored product ads, of course, we have the manual and the automatic targeting types. With the automatic, They've introduced better as far as different match types. Those include the close match type, where it's basically, what is it? It's ads that are showing that are directly related to the content of your product. So it's very relevance driven advertising. You have loose match, which is that's kind of more of the shotgun, where it's just like let's just put it out for anything that's even remotely close as far as a search term. We're gonna show your ad. Obviously, if everybody's doing that, then your ad is still only going to be shown to a very a smaller group. So the targeting is very low on that one. You have substitutes. Substitutes is similar to what we would see traditionally, as far as if you're on a product listing and you've got sponsored products related to this product, that would be basically supplements. Or substitutes, excuse me. Substitutes, basically these are alternative products that we're going to show an ad for you. That would be substitutes. And then complements would be products that are directly related to your product. They might be accessories, they might be, if you sell a watch, then maybe, a complement would be a watch band. If you're selling a phone, a complement might be a phone case. These kinds of things. The ads show for that are very limited on that one. But these are things that the traditional automatic campaigns have always shown the ads for, and they go beyond that. In fact, this is actually just kind of the first pass that Amazon is doing as far as with the close, loose, substitutes, and complements. That's just kind of the first four. But they also get into related categories, parent, child, sibling, subcategories. They get into competitive, as far as like the sales channels coming into Amazon. So there's a lot more data that still we don't have access to, but it's more visibility into what type of, and actually gives us the ability in newer automatic campaigns to be able to adjust the bidding on those four different types of automatic targeting matches, so that you can emphasize one or the other. Excuse me. I would say that certainly the close match, oftentimes what happens on this is that somebody wants to relate it to the keyword match types. And so the close match is similar to an exact match, I suppose, in that it is intentionally supposed to be more targeted. Originally, when it first rolled out, it didn't have as much ad impressions and visibility as the loose match. However, we've seen over the past 2 months where that has changed, so that Amazon is getting better at focusing in and showing the ads on the close match. So we're starting to see more ad impressions and more orders come in through the close match. I'm not sure if they just kind of loosened up the restrictions on that one, or if it's a learning algorithm that is adjusting over time. It could also be the more accessible to more advertisers that it certainly has become more competitive. The cost per clicks and the resulting ACoS has certainly jumped up in the past 2 months compared to what it first started out at. Loose match is probably going to get your second batch of orders and have the next amount of ad impressions showing, and that's just more of the like let's just try to show it to anybody that's even relevant to this product.
Yeah. And in your experience, do you think everybody, all like beginners, intermediate sellers, and power sellers, should all of them use all the 4 match types, or is there a strategy that you would probably recommend?
Yeah, I would recommend take on what you can manage. It's easy to go in and say, hey, here's a new feature, let me try it out, and then forget about it. And then 2 months later, it's like, oh, why do I have a 700% ACoS? Because I wasn't paying attention to it. So if you don't have the habit and the process or the resources, whether that's your own internal team or, an outsourcing, virtual assistant or something like that can help you stay on top of that, only it's like how to eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? It's only take on what you think you can actually manage on a week-to-week basis. That's part of there's going to be a lot more options because there's a lot more that you can do. There's a lot more insights that are available now in the advertising. Most sellers, they don't have time to do that because they need to be focused on product sourcing and quality control and those kinds of, those kind of challenges.
Absolutely. And what kind of insights are you talking about?
Well, so for instance, when it comes to, and this jumps over more to, when it comes to, like, say, the sponsored ads, automatic campaigns, and those close match, loose match, it's more of you're seeing basically how Amazon is automatically targeting your ads or showing your ads based off of relevance to the product, and you can test to see change it, how that might change over time if you are testing different content. Or giving category or title or images that might change if you're you can basically split test. But if you change the content or the perception of the product to a more general audience, to a more specific audience, does that change how Amazon decides to show your ads based off of its perception of buyer intent and things that we don't see, and certainly relevance? That would be one thing from the sponsored ad side. From a sponsored brand side, the options as far as storefronts and storefront insights, there's a whole wealth of data that's available to a number of sellers who have access to things like storefront insights and being able to build custom storefronts and individual product lists through sponsored brand ads. That gives a lot more insight as far as what type. It gives you more information. It certainly doesn't give you all the demographic information that you might have with more advanced platforms, but we're starting to get a better feel for our target audience and kind of validate maybe what we have. We might theorize as a seller as far as who our target or our ideal audience is. We're getting more insights to validate that that might be true.
Interesting. Yeah, definitely. And I think all of us have to check out these insights and then keep optimizing the campaigns for sure. And one of the things that I've often observed is that product placement also plays a major role in conversions, right? So relevance is definitely one of the most important things. And also, where is it placed? Is it placed in a detail page where right next to a competitor, which is not even relevant to your product, or all the way down to at the bottom? So that is one of the I would say that it is one of the most important things as well that contributes to conversions. So what are your thoughts on that, and what do you think sellers can do to get to the top of the page, and how can they control the whole situation?
Well, again, so it is certainly a lot about, I definitely agree with you on that, is that relevance plays a huge part as far as whether or not you actually ultimately get a conversion out of your ad being placed, for instance. So you figure is that your ads could be running for search terms and keywords that are directly relevant to your product. But if you search on Amazon and all the products that come back are not related to your product, the search term might be very relevant to your product, but the results that the shoppers are seeing are not relevant to your product. And so you lose context, you lose the relevance advantage there. When it comes to some of the new targeting features, like for instance on the sponsored ads, sponsored product ads, manual targeting, you've got some new features. In addition to the existing keyword targeting, you've got product targeting. Within product targeting, you have the ability to target specific competitors or the brands, and a lot of times that does require some. If you're gonna dive into the individual product targeting, you've really got to narrow it down to where do I want my ad to show next to another product. As you mentioned earlier, as far as a product, your ad showing up on somebody else's, like a competitor's product detail page. Ideally, you want your ads only showing on products that are relevant to the audience, and that may be a loose relevance, as in it may not be the exact same product, but it still may be the same audience. So somebody who is, somebody who is searching for, dog food might be in the market for, a dog collar. I'm just coming up with an example here, right? And so it's fine for you to, it's relevant enough. You don't have to have your ad running on another dog collar listing. It can be other, similar areas, but it's more about the audience than it is about your product against your competitor's product.
Yep.
There's also going to be cases where you improve your chances of getting an ad that will convert better if you can limit as far as where your ad is shown based off of your competitive ability. So if you have a product that has a 4-star, have 4-star reviews and sells for $20, and your ad is running on a competitor's product detail page that has 4 or 5 stars and is for $18, for is cheaper. There's not really a compelling reason for a shopper to jump away from the product detail page that they've already landed on, they've already found themselves, in order to go look at something that, well, that looks like it's the same product, it's just higher priced, or it has lower reviews, or there's nothing compelling in that comparison. So you really want to make sure that if your ad is running, take some time in order to figure out, who am I actually targeting? Who are my weak players? One of the things you can look at directly from your search term reports, your advertising, is look at all the ASINs that your ad is currently showing, that is coming up as a search term with an ASIN. Look at those ads and see, okay, which ones are actually converting for my product? Those are your weaker competitors that you could probably successfully run additional ads on. They may not be huge, they may not get a huge amount of traffic, but you have a much more likelihood, if you already converted for them once through your advertising, if you be more aggressive in that advertising, you could probably show up and probably convert even more.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes, definitely. And going back to the topic of match types, you were just talking about how, one of the most common questions, at least in a lot of forums, is that do I use all of the 3 match types at the same time, or do I use from put a funnel there, broad to phrase to exact? So you wanted to talk about that earlier, and so.
Right. Well, I know certainly. So this is something that I've taught, to my community, to my my training course students, certainly within my own agency. This is something that changes over time, because Amazon changes as far as where they put their focus on which keyword match types, how the ads show, when they prefer to show ads, the cost of those different match types. It's gone through a number of iterations. I think it probably changes 2 or 3 times a year. Current best practice on that one that I teach is start out with phrase match. Phrase match is currently, and has been for about the past year, is going to get the most exposure. It's going to get the most visibility by a potential target audience. And then as the search terms convert on a phrase match, then test those out in exact and broad as well. So we're not leaving one behind. We're basically testing all 3 match types just on the converting terms to see if there is a better performing match type. There's a common counter opinion, we'll call it, as far as there's a technique outside of Amazon that's used to migrate from a broad match, and then migrate that over to phrase match, and then migrate over to exact match, and exact match is the final destination, which works fine in Google AdWords. It doesn't work as well on Amazon, because Amazon's an e-commerce platform. It actually has better data, and it's also using artificial intelligence and deep learning in order to assess the intent of the shopper in that moment. And so they're going to change which ads and which match types are being shown based off of their perception, their prediction of what the intent is of that shopper in that moment. If they have a high confidence, yeah, they'll probably show an exact match if it's available, which is great. And that's where many sellers stop, and they go, oh, well, I guess exact match type is that's the buying audience. Those are the ones I want to show it to. The problem with that, of course, is that Amazon is only confident in their intent about 20% of the time. So if you only commit to exact match, you've now limited yourself to only 20% of the potential sales you would have. So I would say the phrase match is definitely my go-to first, and then I test out the other ones. It's not uncommon for us to do negative matching inside of our broad campaign, and we try to focus more on the phrase and exact match. But sometimes we have keywords that it simply just performs the best inside of a broad match, and unfortunately, that's something you got to test on a keyword by keyword basis.
Definitely. Yeah. I would say so. And also it depends on the product, and another big thing is the keywords that might be like you were talking about, how different match types work certain times and certain times not. And a major role is played by keywords themselves, right? So certain times certain keywords might be working really well for you, and just a month later it might not. So have you seen this happen, and what is your experience?
Yeah, it does happen. I would say that it's more about relevance, and so for Amazon to change to shift and say that this keyword is less relevant for your product is probably not actually about your own product. It's probably more about having a stale product that hasn't been modified or updated in content or image or anything in the last 6 months to a year. And after a while, Amazon's kind of like, okay, the seller's not even trying, so I'm going to test out other products that are constantly split testing their content, updating their listings, they're launching new products. They're actually trying to be to have, it's maybe that's giving Amazon a bit too much credit as far as how much insight they're paying attention to us as sellers. But at the same time, we definitely see where regular split testing of content seems to revive campaigns and organic listings that may start to slide. Usually the reason for that slide, either in advertising or in organic, is because of change in Amazon's perception as far as relevance. That's where things need to continue to be tightened up. If you have product listings that are still using the content that you used when you first created the product, it's time to update it. Do it in small increments. Start out, with description and back-end terms and your basic content listings. And then ultimately decide very carefully on things as far as like image changes or title changes or category changes. Definitely split testing on images. We certainly believe in within our agency is an important thing to do.
I completely agree with you, and that is one of the things that is overlooked a lot of times, because it has so much power. So you can immediately know what image is working for you and what title works the best. So this is something that is not being taken seriously, I feel. And another thing is, so what do you think is the best practice? How many days or weeks once should the listings be optimized?
It's here's what I'll tell you is that Amazon is looking every hour. They look every hour, and they kind of do an assessment every hour, every day, every week, every month, every quarter, every 6 months, and every year. So, I would say that probably if you're doing some kind of a change or an update on a monthly basis, that will probably cover as far as the relevance and reduce keyword slide, if you will. Excuse me. To do it daily or weekly might be a little bit aggressive, but there are some specific strategies as far as weekly updates. But I would say for the most, I think probably the biggest check for most sellers is like, if you have not touched the content of a product listing in the last 3 months, it's time to revisit that.
Yeah, I think, yeah, sure. And another thing that contributes to listing optimization would be the keyword feedback. So you pick the converting keywords and then put it into obvious spaces like title, bullet points to increase conversions, to increase the relatability factor, right? So one of the questions that I'm asked the most is, so when you change the keywords or the order of the keywords, most people ask me that will it have an impact on the ranking? Suddenly I'm indexed for, let's say, dog collar, and if I introduce another keyword in between dog and collar, will my rank drop for dog collars, right? So what do you think about that?
Yeah, as far as, because you're talking about, I mean, there's terminology that most people probably are not familiar with, but certainly somebody in SEO would be, and that's as far as like bridging and proximity and, some of these kind of, terms as far as how close keywords are and are they in specific phrases. I've always recommended that try to focus in on specific phrases, not try to stuff keywords in the middle and hope that Amazon will automatically bridge. It's not that Amazon doesn't have the capability to see 3 different phrases within a chunk of 5 words, right? It's more about if they're going to, you have so many competitors who are already doing it, who may use very specific phrases and not try to basically commingle a keyword phrase. It's easier for Amazon just to select somebody else who seems like they're trying to target better. They want us to focus on relevance. They want us to target better. They're going to make choices based off of very specific targeting. So I would always recommend that try to, use the advertising to identify as far as what are the search term phrases, the specific phrase that is not simply just converting, but maybe is providing the best. From an advertising standpoint, you could say, well, the best return on that ad spend, but from an organic spend side, it doesn't really matter how much the ad spend was or what the ACoS was. It's not relevant. It's about what has actually converted, what is getting a high click-through rate. High click-through rate in your advertising is a strong signal for things like your image and your title and your price, as far as the relevance to that shopper, as far as whether or not you're attracting the shopper that's looking for your type of product. But I would say as far as like the phrases that convert the best, and ideally they're not 1 or 2 word high competition phrases. They're ones that actually are, I wouldn't necessarily say long tail, but I would say like 3 to 5 word phrases, and try to put those forward, in other words, toward the front of the popular content fields, the bullet points or the title. Try to have them the first 50, 60 characters is a good practice. From there, start adding on your secondary and tertiary phrases after that. And like you mentioned earlier, very valid, make sure that it's readable. Anything that I love studying shopper behavior, because there's so many things that it's easy to pick up when it comes to the SEO or the quality of a product listing. Is if you read it from a standpoint of not, oh, somebody searched for this phrase, and therefore I need to have this phrase, have a high keyword density and have it, spread throughout the listing, or I need to have it lead with. The readability, a lot of sellers think the readability is about like, oh, does it have my target keyword phrases? That's important, but I would say the reason that most product listings lose their audience, that lose the shopper, it doesn't take much. A misspelling, a character that's been improperly converted, a bad phrase. Just basically, if you're targeting somebody who is a native English language speaker, you better make sure that there's no language mistakes in there. Because people, it's surprising how sensitive people are, and that applies to any language. You want to have a native language speaker that is able to double check or quality check the content to make sure there's not some really easy common mistakes that simply just put off a shopper and say, oh, these people, they don't even, like like I'm bad that way as far as like spelling mistakes. And so I'll see that in a listing, or I'll see that in something, and it's easy for me to just kind of immediately dismiss it as like, oh, suddenly now it's lower quality because there was a misspelling on one word. I mean, that's kind of petty. But if you think of shoppers as being petty, the SEO's got to just be nailed as far as perfect language.
That is super insightful, given that a lot of sellers are not from the US and their native languages might not be English, right? So that's interesting. And I have so many questions to ask, but I'm afraid that we're running out of time.
Sure.
So before we wind up, I'd like 2 questions to be answered. So one is about Q4. So Christmas is just like a couple of weeks from now. Do you have any strategies that you'd like to recommend our sellers, especially for Christmas?
Well, certainly, I mean, we're running into the last week. 3 days prior to Christmas Day is when sales are going to dry up. So you figure the 22nd, your sales are going to vanish. If this is your first season, be aware that once Prime Day is no longer an appeal to the shopper, or not Prime Day, but the 2-day Prime shipping is no longer available, it's too late. It doesn't matter if there's we've got a 1-day option. No, doesn't matter. There's so many Prime subscription Prime subscribers that take advantage of the 2-day. I know certainly it has trained me to be very demanding in my shipping. I ordered something from a retailer's website, and I was shocked that it was going to take 5 days to get to me. I'm like, how could that be? But in the meantime, it's not uncommon for a seller who is excited that yes, they're making sales, and they start doing even more. They either get desperate and try to advertise more heavily, or they're enjoying the sales and they decide to advertise more heavily. They start spending money without really thinking about the consequence of it, if they're going to get an ROI on it. They say it's like, yeah, I'm selling like crazy, and yeah, sure, I've got 100% in-cost. That's fine until the week after Christmas, when all the sales ends and all it stops, and Amazon says, okay, now we want to be paid for all this advertising that you did. Make sure you understand what your break-even net profit margins are, your break-even ACoS, and break-even bid, so that you know if your advertisements are in alignment. And absolutely shift from I'm just going to advertise to everything, to pick your top 5, 5 to 10 search terms. Focus all of your energy on those 5 to 10 search terms, especially in this last 10 days or so, because everything else is spending money with a chance of selling, versus go with what you know works and is going to give you the conversion, and make sure you know what your break-even ACoS is so you can keep that under control.
Absolutely. Great advice. Yeah, definitely. Everybody has to keep in mind. So
and that, and try out, I would say from the organic listing, try out the $2 coupon too.
Awesome.
It's surprising how well that actually works.
Yep. Definitely. And lastly, would you like to say something about PPC scope, and would you like to share how,
Here's what I'll tell you is that, and this is not officially announced yet, but we're shifting PPC scope to, we pivoted it over to, in the last few months, we pivoted over to more of supporting the needs of consultants and agencies. My own agency, we have our own in-house technology because it's a lot more advanced, but as far as the PPC scope platform goes, it's going to be primarily shifting come January 1st over to supporting what we call basically the pro accounts, which are more for consultants and agencies, and so there's going to be a lot more features available for them. There's plenty of other solutions on the market for the typical seller. It's not like we're kicking anybody out the door, but we're going to stop taking on just a standard seller and focus more on the agency side with some more of the advanced features. And then as far as, obviously my flagship, my 90% of my focus and time, of course, is with Canopy. And that's, if you don't mind me plugging the URL here, it's www.canopy.management. That's actually the URL. We cater to, typically we cater to the $1 million a year sellers or above. But we do a phenomenal job. Internally, we have a team of 17 on our agency staff, and so we outwork everybody else. We are a boutique agency, so we do for those premium sellers, we provide a premium level of service and premium results. Let's put it that way. So, but yeah, that canopy management. So that's my love right now. So
fantastic. And maybe all of your PPC scope sellers, you can send them over to SellerApp PPC Analyzer. And awesome. So I think that's a wrap on such a wonderful session with you, Brian. Thank you for coming onto the show.
Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Awesome. And if you like the video, do give us a thumbs up. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel for more great content. Do follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And do go to SellerApp.com and sign up for a 7-day free trial. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you and goodbye.